Hello and welcome back to Grapple Theory. Thanks so much for joining us once again today. Now today, our very special guest, I'm keen to stress this, is not the leader of a cult. Now a lot of people think she is. She's told us very clearly that she's not, and we're inclined to believe her, mainly because we don't want to get sucked into the cult. Not cult, sorry. You may already know who I'm talking about based on the start that's totally not coerced at all of this intro. But today we are joined by the wonderful Kamille Hansen. Kamille, thank you for coming on the show. Welcome to the show. We can't wait to hear all about the Hansen Ranch, plus loads more. You guys at home are really in for a treat. This is an absolutely brilliant interview. But Kamille, first of all, why don't you tell us about how your years started? It seems like you're really gaining a bit of momentum. You had your Eve debut. You've got a couple of big matches coming up. Do you feel like you're really climbing that ladder now?
Yeah, it's really exciting, I think, especially recently. So obviously, kind of, I've been doing a lot of the character stuff, the Hansen Ranch stuff recently, and that's, I think, the most excited I've been since kind of coming back to wrestling. Obviously, sort of pre-COVID, it was a lot more training, and I wasn't really in the public eye because I was training. But since coming back and since kind of getting this idea about knowing where my character's at, it's been really exciting for me, and so I've kind of felt, like I've been able to get content out there, and that's really helped me in terms of getting attention. But also, I've been really making the effort in the way of crewing. Like, I'm a big believer in terms of crew at as many places as possible, because that's how you get your face out there, and that's how I've gotten to sort of develop relationships with so many different people, wrestlers and promoters now. And people know who I am, who I wasn't even aware they knew who I was.
Yeah.
Purely from doing stuff like that, which is really cool. Like, I'm still very much a wrestling fan at heart, so it's like very exciting when it's like, oh, these people know who I am. So yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And you talk about that because, that's the thing. It must be nice because I think we sort of get mixed opinions on that in terms of a lot of wrestlers are like, when you're watching wrestling on a show, you're like, oh, I just want to be in the ring. Which I understand as well, but can you also sort of sit back and appreciate it as a fan and be like, oh, this is like a great show or a great match?
So it's a funny one. So I think I am still very much like, if I'm at a show, it's kind of, yeah, this is fun to sit back and watch, but I would really like to be in the ring. I think that most wrestlers do feel that way. But no, I do enjoy it, especially when I'm watching one of the people that I've sort of been training under in the ring. So I've been training with Cara Noir, Spike Trivet, and Rhea O'Reilly quite a lot since I moved to London in September. And so those are three people that I always love watching their stuff, learning from them and then seeing them in the ring. I always really enjoy watching their matches. And there's a few others as well. But yeah, I think I'm very 50-50 on that in terms of appreciating what's going on in the ring, but then there is also always going to be that jealousy, I think, in the back of the mind of a lot of people of yeah, this is fun to watch, but I'd rather be doing it myself.
Yeah, for sure. And you mentioned sort of the pandemic stuff. In a way, it sounds weird because obviously everything that's happened during the pandemic has been awful. But in purely wrestling terms, was it nice to, in terms of maybe it just gave you that little bit longer to sort of to train and get your reps in and stuff like that before hitting the ring again?
Yeah, and I mean, the pandemic was a big thing for everyone, but I think it was a particularly big thing for me because I went away and transitioned during that time. I came out as trans the October 2019, so literally 4 months before the pandemic.
Yeah.
So yeah, the pandemic, I kind of went away and transitioned and really found myself. So it allowed me to kind of develop in more ways than one, I guess. It had kind of a big impact, I think, in the way of developing.
For sure. And I wanted to ask you about yourself and sort of the LGBTQ plus community, especially in wrestling as well. I mean, for yourself, on a personal note, like you mentioned, having come out as trans just before the pandemic, then pandemic halts all wrestling. Was there any apprehension coming back to the ring following your transition in terms of, say, what people might think?
It's a difficult question. I think there was and there wasn't. Like I'm friends with the people who are behind Pro Wrestling. My friends in wrestling were quite inclusive anyway. So in one regard, I think I was kind of quite like, I probably felt more reassured than a lot of people would have done just because of who I had around me. I'm very lucky to have some of the people around me that I do have in wrestling. But I think, yeah, like there was a certain part of me that thought, how are people in, say, smaller towns at sort of smaller shows, how are they going to react to seeing someone like me? And that anxiety is still there, because I don't think I've really been able to test that a great deal so far. Like, I'm still in realistically the first year of me properly taking bookings. So I think it's quite hard to kind of get rid of that anxiety, and I'm not convinced it'll ever go away. But like I say, I'm lucky that I had the people around me to support me and reassure me, because I think that kind of lowered my anxiety quite a lot.
Yeah, for sure. No, and that's great to hear. That's great to hear as well. And then also, in terms of, I guess, the community in wrestling as it is at the minute, the LGBTQ plus community in wrestling, do you feel like it's in a strong place at the minute, both in terms of representation in the ring and out the ring, and the sort of reaction of fans? Because we had Cassius on way back when we first started the podcast back in May, June last year. And I mean, he talked about, like, when he was first taking bookings, it was always like, you'd have like one member of the LGBTQ community on the card, because like, just like you'd have like one women's match, you'd have like one member just for the representation. But does it feel like more inclusive than that now? Does it feel like, you've sort of like, and the LGBTQ plus community, it's not just there as a gimmick, do you know what I mean? It's just because, you guys are all like great wrestlers and you deserve to be on the card no matter what you identify as.
Yeah, and I think I think about women's wrestling a lot in this country when we talk about the LGBT community, because so many of the girls are LGBT. A lot of the girls aren't LGBT, but there are a lot that are, and that kind of is reassuring in terms of, it's like, oh, I didn't know you were this, or it's quite interesting to see how many of the girls are actually part of the community, and it's not a big deal. But that's how it needs to be. I think, like, I was a big believer in it, and I've not really spoken about it a lot on Twitter, because I don't think that Twitter is the right place to discuss it. But I don't like it when there are kind of people who go out of their way to say, like, I'm going to like base my personality or base my wrestling character around the fact that I am this one, sexuality or gender.
Sure.
I think that is, I think it plays into stereotypes too much, and I think it's a shame when people do that. Especially because, if you are the something wrestler, if you make yourself the trans wrestler, well, as soon as another trans wrestler comes along, you're not unique anymore. So I was very keen to kind of make sure I stayed away from that. And I think that, there are so many girls, more than I realised, who are part of the LGBT community in this country, that they've kind of done the same thing.
Sure.
The fact that, Kamille Hansen is not a trans wrestler. She's just a wrestler. She's a lot of things, but she's not necessarily a trans wrestler. And I think that that's what's important. Is that rather than being that sort of token, as you say, Cassie said, it's important to be more than just that. And I think that a lot of that comes down to our characters. But yeah, no, I think it's good in terms of how many there are, and how many top quality LGBT stars there are at the moment. I think it's only just getting better. Obviously, I mentioned Pride Pro a second ago. I am so looking forward to that show, because it feels like it's going to be a culmination of what what's kind of been bubbling for a little while in terms of like, you know, we actually have this massive amount of amazing LGBT talent, and we're going to showcase it in one night, and that is going to be so cool.
Yeah,
it's going to be so cool to see.
Yeah, absolutely. We had I think we're putting the clip out either later today or tomorrow ahead of the show, ahead of the like Everything Pattern show. But we had Tony Wright on, who's doing the commentary for it.
Oh yeah,
and obviously that's going out post show, but we had a little bit of him talking about the show that we're going to put out later, as we're recording this later, but not when this goes out later. But he said as well, like, that's the thing, you know, things like Pride Pro and Everything Pattern and things like Progresses Who Run the World as well, and not to mention Eve, obviously.
Yeah.
It's all like, it's you know, all females or all, you know, ethnic minorities or all LGBTQ people. But that's not like, it's not a gimmick for the show. It's saying this is the talent here that we've got, book them on other shows. It's not meant to be like a gimmick thing, which I think is what's important to distinguish as well.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I think that's the intention behind a lot of these shows, actually saying, you know, it's about putting, you know, sort of all ethnic minority talent or all LGBT talent or all kind of female talent together and saying, you know, look at the quality of people we have. You have no excuse to not book these people elsewhere. I think it's an important point to make in terms of saying, you know, like, look at these people, they are top quality. Don't ignore them just because you want to do like the token women's match or something, you know, because they're so much more than that. Yeah, it's a shame that I get quite excited. There's a couple of shows that I'm booked on coming up a little bit down the line, and there's like 4 women's matches, and it gets me like really excited in terms of like, this is so cool, the fact that like there's so many women's matches on the show. It's exciting that people are actually starting to move away from the like one women's match on a card thing, and I think that companies like Eve and Pride Pro and obviously the Everything Planned events, they have a big role to play in kind of making other promotions realise that.
Yeah, for sure. And something you picked up on there, when you talk about, because again, it's on your Twitter as well, where you say performed by Cam Tilly. And like, that's something that obviously not all wrestlers do, but I know that Cara Noir does as well, because when we were emailing him back and forth to get his like, to have him on the show, it says underneath his emails, performed by Tom. And like, so I'm really intrigued by that distinction in terms of like how, you know, in terms of making it more aware that you're playing a character, say on social media.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously I trained under Tom, and have been doing since I moved down to London. And we have quite a lot of chats. I live quite near him, so he often will give me a lift back from training. And it was something that kind of talking to him about that, I kind of realised actually, you know, I think it's important to distinguish that myself as an individual and my character are two separate things. And from my point of view, I think it gave me a lot more creative license. I think I was quite anxious for some of the stuff I'm putting out. Obviously, like this kind of idea of my character being like cult leader, or not a cult leader, I should say.
No, I was going to say,
a legitimate organisation. Yeah, but like my character's a cult leader, and I kind of worry that people are going to misunderstand how much of that character is me. And so I think it was important for me to put sort of performed by Cam Tilly in there simply because it allowed me to have a little bit more creative freedom in terms of trying to become that character. And, you know, so some of the tweets on my Twitter are me tweeting, like, because it's not a personal Twitter, but it's, you know, if I want to insult my friends like I did with Scotty Rourke, or something like that, you know, or tweet something that I find funny, then I'll tweet it. So some of the tweets on there are me, but particularly when I put out like promos and things like that, I think it's important to have that distinction of saying, you know, this is my character, this is not me. Because I think that, you know, there are some fans that don't always understand that there is a difference. So I think it's important to put out there. I think it's obviously preference. I guess it kind of does break kayfabe a little bit, but I just prefer it because I think it allows me to have more creative freedom.
Yeah, sure. So on that note, then, where does Cam end and Kamille begin for you personally in terms of like how much of a similarity is there?
I'd like to think that I'm a nice person. I think of Kamille as a very like we've all met the people who are so overly nice and like sickly sweet that actually we know that they're terrible people, but they have this facade of niceness about them. That's who Kamille is to me. He's all the time, but she's just a nasty cow. Whereas I prefer to think that I'm not that. I prefer to think I am a nice person. And as well, like I think it comes from the sense of like Kamille is very like she very much believes in using other people for her own gain, and I'm not that person. So like we are very different. The only thing that's similar is that we have similar brands of humour. Because some stuff that I put in my videos are there purely because I find them funny. So,
but that's nice, isn't it? When some of it can sort of mesh in, and you can be like, "Oh, nice, I like that." Like,
yeah, it was like when I accused Bo Bells of voting Tory. I did that just because I knew that she'd get upset about it, and it'd be really funny for me. Yeah, it's nice to have some crossover, I think. Sorry, there's a horde of people walking past me.
I'll blur faces and stuff when people walk through anyway, so that's not...
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, I don't know how to do background blur on this.
No, that's fine.
No,
it's fine. I can blur the faces in post, so that's not a problem. But yeah, I was going to ask you, because you mentioned obviously the Hansen Ranch already a little bit. So talk to me about that concept, where that came from. And I mean, you say it's not a cult, you know, but it seems like a cult. Like I know you've had a lot of aggravation about this, but
yeah, I've argued with many people on Twitter. So the Hansen Ranch, like the inspirations for Kamille Hansen come from a lot of different places, mainly outside of wrestling. This is another Tom Dawkins thing in terms of saying, you know, a lot of your inspiration for your wrestling character should kind of come from outside of wrestling. So Kamille, in a lot of ways, is heavily inspired by people like Charles Manson, by Jim Jones, by people like that. But then there are other areas that I draw inspiration from, things like Scientology. And if you look at like the first promo that I put out, you'll see it's very heavily inspired by a lot of like Scientology sort of adverts. And so that's kind of where I drew a lot of that from. Just because I quite like the idea of having this organization that's very much like on the surface based around, yeah, we're going to fulfill you and make you a better person. But then there's kind of this darkness behind it in terms of actually that isn't what they're about. That isn't what their intention really is. Obviously, you know, I watched the Louis through Scientology documentary recently, and I drew quite a lot of stuff from that recently, actually. But yeah, I mean, the name the Hansen Ranch, it comes from, I'm trying to think of the name of it now, but Charles Manson's base of operations was a ranch, and so that's where that comes from. But that's kind of the inspiration from it. There's a lot of places that I drew inspiration from, but just kind of this idea of having this organization that's like I say, nice on the surface, but actually behind the scenes there's something more going on, and that's something that's going to get revealed sort of as we go on. Like for my build up for my match at East, I've got quite a lot of stuff in the works that's going to get released sort of over the next couple of months. Obviously, I know this podcast is going to go out sort of mid-April. So there'll be some stuff that's gone out by that point, but a lot of it is going to come out sort of across April and across May.
Nice.
So it's going to slowly reveal more about the Hansen Ranch and about sort of Kamille Hansen as a person. to specifically build towards the match that I'm going to be having. Just because I like the idea of revealing things on Twitter via video format and being creative. Because it's it's not done enough. There are some people who do it so well, and there are certain people who I aspire to be. But that's like why I'm doing it. I think because it's still not done enough. So yeah. But if you keep an eye out on my Twitter, you'll see things coming out.
Yeah, awesome. Well, we look forward to seeing all that. And obviously, you mentioned in our chatting before this that you can talk to us about that match at Pro Wrestling East. So talk to us about that, because you said it was a sort of dream match for you.
Yeah, it's mad. It's my first year taking bookings, and I've been offered a dream match. So it might have been announced by this point. If not, then it's a Grapple Theory exclusive. But it might be announced. I'm not sure. So I'll be wrestling against Jetta in the first round of the women's title tournament.
Amazing.
For Wrestling East. So I'm really looking forward to it. She is one of the most experienced women in this country, and I'm looking forward to it purely like for how much of a learning experience it's going to be for me. Getting to work with someone of that quality, because she's just absolutely amazing, and she's the loveliest person in the world as well. So no, I'm so excited for it.
Amazing. It's incredible.
Yeah, she's been getting lippy on Twitter about the Hansen Ranch. So
gonna have to put her in a place.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, that's great. And in terms of that, do you get that in terms of, say, things like your Eve debut and getting this match then with Jetta? Are those sort of like almost pinch yourself kind of moments in terms of how far you've come and those opportunities you're getting?
Yeah, definitely. So for the Eve match, I found out quite late on that I was going to be in that match. It was like on the day that I got a message from Dan. It was like, yeah, you're wrestling Mercedes, and it was like, oh, okay. I guess I've got a match now. I guess I've got to get ready for this. Like, I had my gear, but I was like, oh, I'll bring my gear. It's fine. I probably won't need it. It'll be fine. And then Dan messaged me and was like, yeah, you're working Mercedes. And it was kind of, I almost didn't have time to get nervous. For East, it's a little bit different. Obviously, I've got quite a lot of time to think about it. But I both matches, I was just so like, oh, I can't believe this is happening. It's funny because, again, for Eve, like I did an interview exactly a month before I made my Eve debut, and in the interview I said, oh yeah, if I make Eve within 5 years, then that's like a dream for me.
And you cut that by quite a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly a month later I wrestled Mercedes, so it was like, oh, okay, I guess I've got to like go back to like my list of goals now and like
cross something else off. Yeah.
Yeah, it was like, I guess I've got to rework these goals now. But yeah, no, like Eve was a dream come true, and I'd love to work with them again. I don't think we've got anything. I've got anything with them for a while, but it's a company that I massively enjoyed working with. And backstage, it's like the nicest environment as well. So yeah, I'd love to go back to Eve again.
Amazing. Yeah, amazing, incredible. Well, I mean, we've spoken as well about the Hansen Ranch, and we talk about in terms of yourself as the leader. I'm sure you do some sort of like scouting and recruiting as to who you'd want to be part of it, or who you think would be worthy enough to enter. Do you have your eyes on anyone?
Well, there's someone up north who we talk to quite a lot. Polish Barry Haneker, who always communicates with me on Twitter. So I think Polish Barry's got to join us, I think, soon. But I've got a list of the top people to recruit. Obviously, Scientology had a list of celebrities they wanted to recruit back in like the 70s to try and lend and legitimacy to them.
Yeah.
So I've created my own little list of people. Jetta is on there.
And if you beat her, then obviously she's going to have to join, isn't she? Because she's going to see how powerful an organisation it is.
Well, this is it. It's save or destroy. It's save or destroy. We save them. We allow them to join us, or we destroy them. That's the Hansen Ranch.
Brilliant. And we spoke about Tom as well, about Cara Noir. In terms of how, like, just talk to me about him, because it sounds like since you moved down here, it sounds like he's really helped you develop your character and how you are in the ring and your sort of persona in general.
Yeah, I mean, like, a lot of it is just from me just kind of absolutely just talking nonsense with him in the car, sort of on the way back from training all the time. Just about character ideas, and I was absolutely clueless about kind of the direction I wanted my character to go in until very recently, and then it was all of a sudden it was kind of like, oh, I have this idea. What do you think about this? And he's kind of like, said, oh, well, yeah, you need to think about this, you need to think about that. And it's kind of just gone from there. But I think it also has to be stated, like, how much he's helped me in the ring. Because he's like, his mind for wrestling is so unique to anyone else. The way he thinks about things in a very unique way, I think. And that's really helped me develop in terms of the way I think about wrestling. And thinking about why I do certain things. I mean, I've still got a lot to learn, and I'm really keen to learn from him as much as possible. But it's not. I would say, like, it's not just him. There's like a multitude of people who come and teach at Play Fight. Spike Trevay is another one who. I mean, Spike Trevay is one of the best talkers in wrestling right now.
One of the best promos in the country, easily.
Yeah, I would say, like, worldwide, he's just, like, I don't know if you saw the promo that got released earlier today or last night.
Yesterday, yeah, the post Cara attack one, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I could hear him filming it. I was thinking, I need to watch this when it comes out, because I just think, like, this is going to be amazing, and it was amazing. And if I'm ever looking for inspiration for anything promo wise, it's his promos that I'll go and watch, because they are hands down the best out there. And I think anyone who wants to learn, especially from a promo perspective, has to go and watch Spike Trevay.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, Spike came to, like, my attention personally down in Brighton at Riptide Wrestling. And they also had a feud with him and Cara, and, like, he's just the sort of character that when he's in the ring, you don't look anywhere else. Like, you're fixed on him because he's just so good at what he does. That it's incredible. And the same goes for Cara as well. Actually, both of them, like, you just can't look anywhere else when they're in the ring. You're just fixed on them.
Yeah, and it's the way they work together as well. Like, so I kind of missed Riptide when I only moved down to London in September. So I kind of only was really more aware of the northern scene until fairly recently. So I missed the boat on Riptide, but I've been, like, helping crew a lot for Resurgence, for Wrestling Resurgence, which is an absolutely amazing promotion.
Yeah, love that.
Like, if
well.
people aren't watching Resurgence, why not? But yeah, I saw the matches that they were having at Resurgence. They had a match. It was back in November.
The infamous double turn.
Yeah, where they had a double turn. They had Spike Trevay start working as a face, which is, like,
unheard of.
Yeah. Yeah, those two guys work absolutely amazing together, and to have both of them to learn from on a regular basis at Play Fight is amazing. Having both of them, sort of, that I can go to talk to. And another one as well is Rhea O'Reilly, who often coaches a lot of the women's classes at Play Fight. Again, absolute sort of, like, expert when it comes to women's wrestling, has done so much in women's wrestling. She's just great to learn from as well. She's so good. She's so good to learn from. I I talk to her sort of semi-regularly about ideas and things, and often get her advice on things, and she's really good at giving sort of like constructive criticism and saying, well, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? So having all three of them on a regular basis, it's like, yeah, if you're in the London area, especially like South London, and you're not training at Play Fight, then that's on you.
Yeah. For sure.
Because it's the resources at the end of your fingertips. I've had people coming from where I'm from in Grimsby to have a training session at Play Fight because they're aware of how good an experience it'll be. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And we've got to talk about sort of like your starting wrestling, because you started, again, like you say, from Grimsby. You started with BWR, is that right? Like training wise and everything.
Yeah. So I started. So it's complicated. So there used to be a promotion in Grimsby way prior to the launch of BWR called GWA.
Right.
And they were running quite small shows from a really small venue. I think it was like 100 seats max capacity or something.
Right.
It was a really small venue. And that's where a lot of guys started. Scotty Rourke started there, Tyler Devlin started there, that's Jimmy McGilly started there. That's kind of like a lot of the core BWR guys started there. And that's where I started training, but I'm quite a bit younger than those guys. Not a lot. I was like 14.
Right.
When they were kind of more like sort of 18, 20, early 20s. So that's where we all kind of started, but they kind of, kept it up and kept training, then went on to form BWR after this previous promotion closed, whereas I was very on and off because I was 14.
Yeah, sure.
So they started BWR, and eventually the BWR training school kind of started up. And so I trained at BWR for a bit, and then I moved to Hull, so I trained at NGW for a little while. So it's kind of those two schools where I really started. I wouldn't really, GWA was kind of where we all met.
Right.
But BWR is where I think a lot of those guys have really started to
sort of blossom.
Flourish. Yeah, especially like Scotty Rourke. Scotty Rourke's one of the people that I'm probably closest to in wrestling. I talk to him every day, mainly just insulting him.
Yeah, I was going to say we've got to talk about that sort of dynamic. Yeah, because it seems like you love a bit of banter with Scotty.
Yeah, we just wind each other up. It's great. But yeah, no, he's probably one of the people I'm closest to in wrestling. And yeah, like the trajectory of Scotty Rourke, seeing him from like being like 17, 18 years old and like nearly injuring himself getting out of the ring, which I think he talked about in his interview.
I think he did.
Yeah. Like going from that to like the absolute superstar and like the upwards trajectory that he's on, like it's so cool to see. But yeah, no, I just love winding him up, and he winds me up.
And of course, the other reason we sort of got chatting on Twitter was because you were insulting him and Bo Bells as well. I mean, so talk to me about her as well.
Yeah. So Bo's someone who I actually met since moving down to London. So I've actually known her for quite a short amount of time, but we've just spent a lot of time together, a lot of time training, and she's another one who I talk to every day. They're kind of the two main guys that I go to in terms of like, what do you think of this? What do you think of this? Like, they're the people I go to if I really need someone's opinion on something. But she's great. She's great. Like, she's great in terms of her character, in terms of everything. I don't, but I just love winding them both up. Because they're both so good, and they both have great looks, and they both have great personalities, and so to just try and whittle away at that on Twitter is just my favorite hobby. It was just like the Scotty Rourke urinal cake thing.
That was a good one. That did pop me, I'll admit. That was brilliant. That was
So Scotty had mentioned to me about like, oh, they've done this British wrestlers cake thing, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna have a look at that. Great, Scotty's not on the list. What can I call him? I actually went through like a list of cakes of like, is it going to be funny to call him like an actual type of cake?
Yeah, there we go. See, our thinking was just bantering Ivy, calling her carrot cake. Because she'd mentioned in her, I think her interview with us that she didn't like carrot cake, and I was like, well, I've got to say that she's carrot cake.
I mean, she's right. Carrot cake is dreadful.
Oh no, I totally agree with. Like, shoot, I totally agree with her. But for the purposes of the list, I don't.
Yeah, well, this is it because I was going to call him carrot cake originally, and then I saw, oh, they've already used carrot cake, so I'm just going to go one better and just go really just insulting.
That's the thing. I was thinking of like, what's the worst one I can do? Urinal cake never popped into my mind. I thought carrot cake was like the worst thing you could call someone cake-wise. But...
yeah. Yeah, I mean, it was like stuff like that, and then obviously I'd say like with Bo Bell's like accusing her of voting Tory.
Yeah.
It's so funny because like in terms of both her character, like her character's like she's like a punk, and then like her as a person, like you couldn't meet someone more like like she's very like liberal, very like the worst thing that I could possibly call her is a Tory. So that's exactly what I did. But you'll see like so there'll be a list. I'll published it by the time that this goes out. But I on the list of like the most wanted list for like recruitment, I've done sort of like the name of the person and the rest of it. Then I've just done a little bio. So Rebecca Resner is on there. She's another person who I talk to on a regular basis. She's another good friend. She's also just great, but her nickname is the Blue Eyes White Dragon. So under her bio, I've just put not a real dragon because I think it's important. I think that's something that Kamille would note down is that she's not an actual dragon. And obviously for Scotty Rourke, I've just put that he has a lifetime supply of LV stashed away. At Cleveland and Royal Life of BritWres shows, just because it's important to note these things.
No, it's always important, yeah, absolutely, and it's important the public knows these things as well.
Exactly, I think it's important that we expose our favourite wrestlers.
Yeah, for their lies in their Twitter bios. And absolutely.
Exactly.
Amazing. Well, I mean, it'd be a shame to have you here and not talk sort of almost something parliamentary to do with your job. Now, indeed, I'm not sure. I'm
official parliamentary water.
Yeah, that's how you know it's fancy, right? That's how you know. Right? No Evian here.
No. But I mean, to be fair, it's £1 a bottle. So
yeah, it's better be worth it, yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm not sure we want the kind of attention of say getting you to like sort of name which MPs you think could be good in the ring. But I want to flip it on you and say, are there any wrestlers like in the back who you like? They could do a job like in the Commons. Like that you'd love to see them like just front up to Boris Johnson or something.
Definitely Rhea O'Reilly. Definitely. She would just not, or to be fair, Bo Bells as well. Neither of them would take any shit. It would be amazing to see. I think they might need a security detail around them because I think they might try to attack the PM. But yeah, definitely those two would would stand for what's right.
Amazing.
And would get very angry. I'm perfectly happy to answer the other question now about which MPs.
Go on then. Go on. What do you think?
Well, I think we have to go for the APPG for wrestling guys, really, don't we?
Oh, actually, yeah, get them in the ring. Yeah.
Yeah. So obviously, for people who don't know, I work in the House of Parliament, and part of my job is I work with the APPG for wrestling, which has been really good, and it's really fulfilling. Obviously, there's a lot of work to do, but it's a really fulfilling job. But working with Alex Davis Jones and Mark Fletcher, I have one aim, and that is to drag them to a training session and make them get in the ring.
Oh, get them a play fight! Yeah, that'd be incredible.
Yeah, I'm trying to arrange a visit to play fight. I think at some time, and I'm basically just going to say to Tom, right, if you don't get them in the ring, I will never forgive you.
Yeah. I was going to ask, I mean, just in terms of closing up, we talked about your start to the year. What about
Yeah.
the rest of the year? Because you mentioned having that sort of list that you've got, and you already had to cross Eve off of it. So in terms of like, if we were having this chat this time next year, what would constitute a successful 2022 for Kamille Hansen?
So I have a couple of other promotions that I'm really keen to work with this year. The top of that list is Wrestling Resurgence. At the moment, like obviously I've kind of worked BWR shows. I've worked their Evo shows. I'd love to work at BWR main show. Hopefully that'll happen this year. We'll wait and see.
Yeah.
But then, you know, Wrestling Resurgence is
the very
just,
top.
I just love their product so much.
Oh, for sure.
You know, I got to see. I was crewing at their last show when they did the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe match with Ava, Everett, and Clementine.
Yeah.
And it's the best match I've ever seen. It was amazing, and I hopefully it'll be out on YouTube by the time that this.
Hopefully so. Yeah, I couldn't go to the show, but I'm dying to see it. I just heard the best things about it.
It's just so funny, just so fun, and that's what wrestling should be at the heart of it. I think, you know, it should be fun. So yeah, no, like it's that's my main aim. I think I don't want to create too much in terms of like, I want to do this, I want to do that, I want to do this, I want to do that. I prefer to just have less goals of things that I really, really want to do. And then, you know, work to achieve like fewer goals.
Yeah, sure.
But there's a couple of people who I'd love the rest of this year. Obviously, Jetta's been crossed off my list already. In terms of obviously the match at East that's coming up, but then also Rhea O'Reilly is someone who I'd love to wrestle this year. She would be great to wrestle this year. Bo Bells is another one I'd love to wrestle this year, just because she's such a good friend. Scotty Rourke, like those are like probably the three names that I really like the opportunity to wrestle this year if I get a chance. And like I say, Rhea O'Reilly, Bo Bells, and Scotty Rock, just because they're all good friends, and they've all helped me a lot in terms of, you know, just being there for me to bounce ideas off, what me to get advice from. So yeah, those three people I'd love to work with. Resurgence I'd love to work with, and I'd love to get on a BWR main show. I think that's and get back to Eve as well. Get back to Eve as well.
Amazing. Yeah, anyone who's watching who can book those shows, book them, because come on, we want to see them. Amazing. Well, in terms of just wrapping up, we've got one final feature, and it's more of like a quick fire round, so it won't take too long. But it's called The Matches That Shaped My Life. So I'm just going to give you some scenarios, and you let me know what comes to mind.
Okay.
So the first one is the first match I remember watching.
So this isn't probably the first match that I remember watching, but it's the first match I remember being engaged in actively. Like so it's my cousin got me into wrestling when I was like tiny. So I was always aware of wrestling going on. But the first match I think I was actually engaged in was the first WWE live show that I went to at Sheffield Arena in, I think, 2008. And I think it was CM Punk versus The Undertaker in a casket match.
Nice.
On like a random episode of SmackDown.
I don't remember that, because that's, so like in terms of like age-wise, 2008 I'd sort of like clocked off a little bit. I didn't get back into it until sort of like the mid-10s.
Yeah, I'm sure it was CM Punk. I'm beginning to doubt myself now. I'm sure it was CM Punk. I remember just being so excited as like a small child of like, it's a casket match. But yeah, that's probably like the thing. That's probably the match, because it engaged me so much as a kid. That's probably it.
That's fair enough. Well, the next one might be the same answer, but it might not, because it's the match that made me want to be a wrestler.
Ooh. Yeah, probably that.
Yeah.
It's something I'm gonna have to say that simply because I think because I was around wrestling for so long, I think I knew at quite a young age that I wanted to be a wrestler.
Mm.
So I'm gonna have to say that just because it's I think since I can remember, I wanted to be a wrestler.
Mm. Yeah.
So
No,
yeah, sorry to be boring.
No, it's fine. That's fine. No, we get a lot of people saying it's the same match, but I like to include it anyway, just in case it's something different. But the next one you already answered as well, because it's the first live event I went to. So instead of telling us again, like repeating that event, just tell us about your sort of feelings walking into that like arena, seeing the ring. Like, do you remember how you were feeling?
Yeah, I was so excited. I had my little Rey Mysterio mask on. We were in like the cheapest of cheap seats, right at the top of Sheffield Arena, and I was so excited. I mean, because I'd been to like a lot of the small time like live shows, you know, like around the UK,
right,
and things like that. Obviously, like All Star would come and do the Grimsby Auditorium, and there was a local promotion, RDW, that ran shows at a venue in Cleethorpes.
right.
So yeah, so the first big wrestler that I ever saw, the first big name wrestler I ever saw was Nunzio, because he got brought in to do an RDW show at the Cleethorpes Beachcomber, which about 2 people watching will know what that is. But yeah, so he's the first big wrestler I ever knew, and so that was a small live event. But yeah, like going to that event, I was just so excited. I was so excited that I don't think I was that aware of what was actually going on.
No, I think that's the thing, isn't it? You just remember the excitement more than anything else.
Yeah, but what was funny was that I remember because I'd obviously been to like small live events like places like RDW, and obviously on these shows you get to do like meet and greets with the wrestlers at the end of it. So I was convinced that it would be the same at a WWE show. Like absolutely convinced. So I was going around all my friends at school and being like, "Oh, I'm going this. Whose autograph do you want me to get for you?" So I was like promising all my friends that I was going to get like the Undertaker's autograph for them.
Oh no!
And then having to like turn up the next day and being like, there wasn't a meet and greet.
It didn't work how I thought it would work.
Yeah, I mean, I was like 7.
Yeah.
So like I'll cut myself a little bit of slack.
Yeah.
But I just remember just having to like apologise to all of my friends at primary school, just being like, I couldn't get the Undertaker's autograph for you. I'm so sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, that is a gutting feeling. To be fair, I can imagine. I can imagine.
I was broken. I was a broken
as someone who was raised on like WWE and then went to indie shows after, I can imagine the other way around. It would be confusing when that didn't happen.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, the next one I'm going to put you on the spot a bit because it's a tough one. It's my favourite wrestler ever.
So, I have several for different reasons. But I'm gonna go with the person who is my childhood favorite wrestler. I think that's like the most important thing to kind of think about, and that is Rey Mysterio.
Nice.
Like my in-ring style is nothing like Rey Mysterio. My character is nothing like Rey Mysterio. But as a kid, Rey Mysterio was the man.
Yeah.
For me, right? You know, whenever he came on the screen, I broke sofas because I would be like jumping off of the arms of the sofas, giving like elbow drops to cushions and stuff. Rey Mysterio just excited me as a wrestler so much, and I think now, like even today, like I love to watch a Rey Mysterio match because you still get that like childhood like excitement of like it's Rey Mysterio, and the longevity of his career as well, like the fact he's still going and he's still doing what he's doing like this amount of years on.
Oh, he's remarkable, isn't it? Yeah, incredible.
Yeah, he's the guy. Yeah. But yeah, there's like a list of people who I could name for different reasons, but I've got to say Rey.
Nice, awesome. The next one is the best match I've ever seen, and this is like a live thing, like in person. The best match I've ever seen.
So, the best match I've seen obviously there's a little bit of a recency bias here,
Sure.
but the best match I've ever seen, and I implore anyone to ever watch it, is Cara Noir versus Charlie Evans for the Resurgence title.
That was from just recently at Resurgence in January.
Yeah.
That was an incredible match. I was there for that match, and that was an amazing match.
Yeah, I was sort of hidden away at merch watching it, and it was just I was messaging people I was messaging Scotty Rourke, I was messaging Bobaz saying, like, when this match comes out on YouTube, you have to watch it immediately because it's the best match I have seen in a long, long time. I've seen like a lot of matches, obviously, like, you know, crew and wrestling shows. I'm sort of busy every weekend, so I'm slowly becoming more miserable and less easily excited by watching wrestling matches. But that match, it made me feel like I was like a kid again in terms of like getting so excited about this match.
Yeah.
So it's the one match that I would say anyone who wants to be a wrestler should go and watch that match.
Yeah, great match, great shout.
Yeah.
And the next one similarly is again just like seeing it live situation, but it's the biggest pop I've ever heard.
I don't know. I mean, there's been a few. Scotty's pop when he won the. So both pops for Scotty winning the belt at BWR recently, and the belt that this is all just like people winning belts in various places. But yeah, the time that Scotty Rourke won the Ultra X Championship, the time that he won the BWR Cruiserweight Championship, and also the time that Robbie X won the BWR Heavyweight Championship, were all massive pops. I think I'm more inclined to go with any of them because they were all in such small rooms and filled with so many people that the pops seemed bigger.
Huge, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like if it's a room of like 1,000 people popping, it's like, okay, this is a big room and some of the pop gets lost a little bit, but like this is like a room of like 200-300 people tightly packed in, all having the same feeling.
Yeah.
So I'd have to say sort of those three. And I realise I'm naming things that are all very recent.
No, it's fine. No. I understand the recency sort of bias towards it, but those are great answers as well. And the last one is, again, it doesn't have to be a match, but in your mind, wrestling's greatest moment.
This is too much pressure. Too much pressure.
I appreciate I put you on the spot.
Yeah, you have.
But I mean, as a not a cult leader, you've got to be getting used to pressure. Really, you've got to understand it. Yeah.
This is true. Right. I'm really going to have to think about this one. I don't know. For some reason, and I don't know why, but there's a voice in the back of my head saying the curtain call.
Right, yeah. Oh, to be fair.
Yeah, and I think, you know, especially, obviously, Scott, we recently lost Scott Hall, which was incredibly sad, obviously. Yeah. But I think the curtain call possibly was the greatest modernizer of wrestling.
Oh, it changed wrestling in so many ways, didn't it? Like, especially when you hear back about what happened after it as well, in terms of, you know, Triple H not getting his push, and obviously the fact that Scott and Kevin left for WCW, like, everything changed about wrestling. It's not just kayfabe, but so much more.
I think it changed the way that people think about wrestling. Like, it humanized wrestlers.
Yeah.
And exposed the fact. I mean, we can talk about sort of kayfabe, and kayfabe is important. I mean, especially like with me kind of going like so intensely in like this character direction now, like kayfabe is important, but I think it established the fact that, you know, wrestlers are real people who have real relationships outside of wrestling. should it have happened is obviously a different question. But no, I think the curtain call purely for how much of a modernizer it was.
Oh, that's a great
in
shout.
wrestling.
Yeah. Wrestling wouldn't be what it is now without the curtain call. So I totally agree with that.
Exactly.
That's an incredible.
Exactly.
That's a great one. That really is. Well, Kamille Hansen, thank you for coming on the show. Anyone who's watching, thank you for sticking with us. It's been absolutely great having you on.
Honestly, thank you for having me.
No, of course.
I'm a big fan of the podcast.
Oh, thank you. That really means a lot. That really does. That means a lot to us.
I'm a big fan.
Oh, fab. Thanks so much. Well, we always leave our wrestlers with a bit of promo time to finish the show. So, for anyone watching this who's maybe thinking of signing up for the ranch or just is coming to a show and wants to see what you've got on, hasn't heard of you before, but it's coming to a show that you're on, why is Kamille Hansen going to steal the show in 2022?
Well, you see, we have a lot of wrestlers who will sort of, preach different things, and they'll preach about entertaining you and things like that. But I think in life, we really see the true fulfillment. And, well, the only way to get true fulfillment is by watching Kamille Hansen. She is a god on earth. I am a god on earth. And you might not believe it now. You might not believe it looking at me in this mere mortal form. But by the end, I am going to so aggressively beat Jetta or anyone else who I may be facing in the next few months so comprehensively that the only thing that you can truly have faith in going forward is me.
Amazing. That was incredible. I think that's one of the best promos we've had as a closing promo. That was brilliant.